Military drones and UAPs have shut down military bases and airports all around the world in a global phenomenon. Creation of a select UAP committee in the US House of Representatives is being debated. An underwater alien base in the Gulf of Mexico is claimed to be protecting a Mexican city from hurricanes. Why is the US military standing down from taking kinetic action against UFOs and drones hovering over nuclear facilities and military bases? These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the December 28 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. This will be the last Week in Review for 2024. And things definitely are ending with a bang with this year. So there have been some significant developments, but it will be a rather short Week in Review this week. I do have a webinar later today, which I'll talk about. And next week we will resume in 2025. So let's begin. So the mystery drones UAP phenomenon just continues to dominate world news when it comes to UFOs, UAPs. And so there have been reports of a Japanese airport now that has closed down because of drones. And so this is just something that shows that this is a global phenomenon. It's not just happening in the United States and Britain, but other countries are experiencing an unknown surge or unknown craft that are flying above major airports, military installations. And this is something that governments are scrambling to explain to the population. Meanwhile, none of these drones or these UFOs have been shot down. This is only compounding public interest because people are wanting to know what they are, and politicians in the United States, Britain, and other countries are increasingly asking, what are these things? Why isn't the military telling us? And why haven't some of these been shot down, taken down? So that does suggest some very advanced technology is involved. So here we have a post from Ask a Poll that talks about the US House Oversight Chair, James Comer, exclusively tells Ask a Poll that a select UAP committee is being discussed. So what is significant here is that the House Oversight Committee, that is the committee that has hosted 2 subcommittee hearings so far, one in 2023 and one this year, that the 2023 one had David Grush, it had Ryan Graves, and it had Commander Fravor that talked about their experiences concerning UFOs, and the one this year had Luis Elizondo, who could be called a whistleblower along with David Grush. But the others that appeared this year with Luis Elizondo, they are more in the category of experts. I mean, you had Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, you had Michael Schellenberger, a investigative journalist, and you had Mike Gold, a former assistant administrator of NASA. So Elizondo was the only one of that group that could be classified as a whistleblower, similarly to David Grush in the 2023 hearing. So these oversight, or these subcommittees in the U.S. House Oversight Committee have been very active in holding these hearings, and so it is a positive development that they do want to have a permanent select committee, and they are discussing that. Now, I mean, it really is interesting to kind of ask the question, would this UAP committee, this select committee, if it were created, would that make a difference as far as transparency and disclosure is concerned? If it relied on government officials and experts, as in recent hearings, not much can be expected, because those two hearings that were held in the House of Representatives Oversight Committee, those only had one whistleblower in each committee and in each hearing, and both of those whistleblowers, both of them, whether we're talking about David Grush or we're talking about Luis Elizondo, they themselves did not have direct first-hand experience with any of the programs, with any of the reverse engineering of captured UFO craft or of the biological entities. So, I mean, if you compare their testimonies to someone like JP, the military witness that I've been working with since 2008. I mean, he's been directly involved in programs. He's seen the craft. He's touched the craft. He's been in the craft. He's interacted with extraterrestrials. He's seen and interacted with advanced technologies. Now, this is the sort of person that can actually play a big role in introducing information to this to these kinds of committees. But people like that so far have not been called upon. It's only officials, military officials or officers with sterling credentials, which is good. It builds up their credibility, but it means that what you're dealing with is people who haven't got direct hands-on experience themselves, but for one reason or another are very upset at the way the UFO issue has been handled in the Pentagon and the intelligence community, which describes both David Grush and Lou Elizondo, both of whom said that they were aghast or very upset by the lack of seriousness or transparency when it came to the UFO issue, which motivated them to go public and appear before Congress. So if this select UAP committee came forward or was created, would it continue to rely on government officials and experts, or would it start to introduce whistleblowers and experiences who have direct first-hand experience on the craft, the extraterrestrials, the advanced technologies? But so far, the US Congress hasn't shown much interest in such individuals. They're playing it very, very cautiously. One other individual who really should be mentioned is Jason Sands. He recently appeared in a documentary that was released called The Program by James Fox, and he has said that he did consult the House of Representatives and the Senate committees that were interested in UAPs, but they did not want to have him appear in a committee. I mean, they, I guess, thought that someone who has direct first-hand experience with an extraterrestrial or with extraterrestrial spacecraft is a bridge too far. So that's unfortunate, but that's the truth. And incidentally, I have interviewed Jason Sands, and we will be releasing that interview early in 2025. Okay, so here's a story. And just to remind you again, if you want to get references to any of these stories that I'm discussing, just go to my Twitter feed or X feed, x.com/Michael Salla, and you will come to this page and you will see everything that I'm showing you, and you can click the links and see everything. Okay, so here we have a introductory video for exopolitics courses starting on January 6th. this is a set of courses that I actually helped establish, that I did actually establish under the Exopolitics Institute. I'm no longer teaching, but I am an administrator for the courses. So I've taught 3 of the courses, and now those courses are still taught, and they are part of the Exopolitics Institute program. So you have each year we have 3 sets of courses offered in 3 semesters. That is the spring semester, the summer semester, and the fall semester. And so it's kind of structured, or the timing of the courses is similar to university graduate courses. Each course is about 14 weeks, and people are introduced to a lot of information concerning the different topics. So there's 5 courses offered this year for 2025 in the spring semester, and those courses definitely will help you prepare for what's coming, because the drone sightings, I think that they are just the beginning of disclosure. There's just more and more of these drone sightings that are happening around the world. So definitely, if you want to develop your analytical skills and knowledge base when it comes to exopolitics as an academic field of study, and probably or possibly would like to pursue a career in exopolitics when such careers become feasible, and I don't think it's going to take all that long, doing a course through the Exopolitics Institute where you are awarded a certificate or a diploma is really a good way to proceed. So this trailer discusses the 5 courses, and so you can visit. Just go to exopoliticsinstitute.org, and the courses are all displayed there for you, or you could go watch this video trailer. So let me return now to the Twitter feed. All right, here's an interview I did with Jean-Charles Moyen and Melanie Charest, where they talked about 2 things that are of great interest and relevance to all of us interested in exopolitics. Now, the first story that I covered is this quite remarkable incident involving the rescue of a child who was at the time 7 years old, that Jean-Charles and Melanie, they were part of a secret space program, a joint French-US secret space program, and they were rescuing children. And so they rescued, one of the children they rescued was a 7-year-old. And so this is a kind of illustration of how Melanie looked in the secret space programs. Quite a hot chick. Be careful, Jean-Charles. Okay, so there's Melanie in her garb in this rescue. Now, the remarkable thing here is that this child actually is Corina Pataki, and she remembered Jean-Charles and Melanie rescuing her when she was 7 years old, and she was on another planet, and she was in a dark kind of corporate facility, and so in this interview she discusses the facility. And so this is very, very interesting that you have this important corroboration for Jean-Charles and Melanie actually being in the secret space program, because one of the victims of the kind of kidnappings that were happening, and young people, got to be careful with YouTube these days. Censorship, we need to self-censor. So young people get abducted, taken to these bases, and they're abused in many, many ways. Some of them survive. But here you actually had positive extraterrestrials rescuing the children. So that's very important, because people often say, well, if there are positive extraterrestrials, why aren't they helping? And well, they are, because the positive extraterrestrials were directly involved in this program to rescue captured children in these off-world facilities being subjected to certain abuses. So that's Jean-Charles and Melanie involved in a rescue, and that was corroborated by Corina Pataki, who I've interviewed twice now, possibly 3 times on Exopolitics Today. And she is a researcher and a spiritual minister and someone who has direct experience concerning some of the secret space programs and some of the kind of things that have been happening in countries like Romania when it comes to covert technology development programs and so forth, that she was involved in that. And she's confirming that she saw Jean-Charles and Melanie and recognized them decades later after being abducted and taken to this off-world location. The other very notable incident in here was that there was a remote viewing of a target that Jean-Charles submitted to Tony Rodrigues. And Tony actually has set up a remote viewing initiative where he has a number of remote viewers that he has personally trained. And what makes Tony very interesting as a remote viewing instructor is that he is probably among the first or among the oldest of the remote viewers, or certainly in terms of history, in terms of when he began operational remote viewing. It began for him, I think it was 1981 or was it 1983, when he was abducted as a child and put into a secret space program. I think it was 81, something like that. But he went to Inyukurn, and he was trained in remote viewing by a famous remote viewer, one of the pioneers in remote viewing. And so that was 1981, and Tony Rodrigues has actually worked in the field. He went to Peru and he performed remote viewing for, I think it was 2 years. And then he was moved over to other aspects of the secret space program where his remote viewing skills weren't required. But more recently, he has started to develop his remote viewing skills again, and he started teaching classes. And so, 40 years after he was initially trained as a remote viewer, an operational remote viewer, he is now teaching others to do it. And so he conducted a study, which was I guess you would call it a double-blind study of a target provided by Jean-Charles Moyen, and this concerned a experience Jean-Charles says he had, where he says he bilocated to a large cavern under the Nazca plains of Peru, where he discovered a large space ark at the bottom of a lake, and inside the ark there was ancient technology and writing which he didn't recognize. So he works with Tony Rodrigues to do a double-blind experiment. It was done kind of in a largely informal way, but what's very interesting is that a remarkable kind of result emerged when one of the remote viewers was able to successfully see exactly what it was that was there under this plain in Peru, or under the Nazca plains. And she saw a lake, a large cavern, stalactites, and also a large craft, a space ark, underneath the lake. And she was also able to see some of the history. So this was a very remarkable corroboration for what Jean-Charles experienced, and matches his experiences in other space arks that he has visited. I mean, so far he's visited Mount Fuji, Japan, the Bahamas, the Giza Plateau and Egypt, Mauna Kea, Hawaii, Mount Kailash in the Himalayas, and most recently in the Nazca, Peru. And he says in all of those instances he was teleported, but the most recent experience was one where he bilocated. So very, very interesting. Now, is this something that's been verified? Well, Dan Winter actually did a study did an experiment with Jean-Charles where he hooked up, or where Jean-Charles got some equipment to measure his gamma brainwave activity. And when Jean-Charles simulated a teleportation experience, Dan Winter recorded a spike in gamma brainwave activity, which has been shown or being discussed by others to be something that is associated with these more developed abilities, especially when it comes to interacting with extraterrestrial craft. So definitely this is an interview well worth watching. Okay, so now let's look at a episode of Star Nation News by Elena Danaan, where she gives a comprehensive explanation of the different types of craft, orbs, and the craft and the spacecraft behind the global mystery drone phenomenon. So she provides an overview of how different extraterrestrial human civilizations use orbs and drones, and what different ETs have to say about what's happening on Earth, with the deep state unleashing its swarms of drones to hide the spacecraft and orbs that belong to different ET groups. So this really is, this episode of Star Nations News really is, to my mind, the most informative and comprehensive explanation of what is happening concerning orbs, or drones, more precisely, how the government, the deep state, the military, how their drones differ from drones or orbs that belong to different extraterrestrial civilizations, and even how among the different extraterrestrial civilizations, you actually have different types of unmanned aerial vehicles or systems that are capable of transmedium flight. In other words, that they can fly from space into the atmosphere of a planet and into an ocean. That's something that conventional drones, especially consumer-grade drones, can't do. Now, can the deep state drones craft do this? I think they probably can. But anyway, this is something that I think Elena describes very, very well. So I highly recommend watching this episode. And I actually will have Elena featuring on a panel with JP with me on this webinar that I will be hosting later today. So I'll talk about that more later in this week in review. Okay, here's a story that I thought was very, very interesting because it talks about an underwater alien base in the Gulf of Mexico protecting a Mexican city from hurricanes. So this is a story in the US Sun. So I think this is a British tabloid that has a US edition. So undersea aliens, bizarre tale of city protected by underwater alien base just off the coast of Mexico, shielding them from hurricanes. So this is very interesting because you have some sources that say that this Mexican city of 300,000 people has been protected from hurricanes because of this underwater alien base. Now, I mean, of course, you know, how do you corroborate that? You talk to witnesses, and there's a lot of conjecture about the possibility that these hurricanes that have swept through the Gulf of Mexico have averted this particular Mexican city. Was that because of this underwater alien base, or was it just luck, sheer luck? So it's very interesting. But I think what I kind of saw in this story in terms of its significance is that it addressed the idea of underwater alien bases, that this is something that I've been able to corroborate through several witnesses. First of all, JP, the military veteran, the army veteran that I've been working with, he was taken to an underwater alien base with 3 large domes in the vicinity of the Bermuda Triangle. Jean-Charles Moyen, he says that he teleported there to that same location and also saw an underwater civilization, and he saw 3 large structures that were part of this underwater facility that belonged to extraterrestrials. So, and then you combine that with the fact that in the US East Coast, there's been a lot of reports that drones have been coming out of the ocean, that there have been police reports, witnesses seeing Coast Guard vessels being trailed by drones that are coming from out of the water. So there is some sort of underwater facility off the Atlantic Ocean from which these drones are emerging. Now, could they belong to extraterrestrials? Could these be some sort of probe, some sort of craft belonging to extraterrestrials, having a base there at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean? Could it be crypto-terrestrials? Could these be deep underground military bases? We just are speculating there. But I think this story does kind of like bring to the public attention the possibility that there are underwater bases belonging to someone that may be linked, or probably is, well, definitely is linked to this mystery drone phenomenon that's sweeping the United States, as there have been witnesses saying that they have seen these drones, these UFOs emerging from out of the water. Okay, here is a interview I did with Mac. I mean, Mac, that's a pseudonym by someone who is has a very interesting background. He was born and raised in India, then he immigrated to Canada, and now in Australia, living in Melbourne, my home city. Hey to all you Melburnians down there, glad you survived. What happened during the that jab episode there, where police were beating up on people who didn't do that thing. So anyway, a lot of people survived. There's quite a community down there in Melbourne that is interested in this information concerning extraterrestrial life. So Matt does live in one of the outer suburbs of Melbourne. And so in his interview, he discussed a cosmic war between soul-bearing humans or soul-bearing creatures. I mean, not all soul-bearing creatures are humans, of course, but there's soul-bearing humans and an AI-conscious collective of Draco reptilians and greys that actually don't have souls but have an AI consciousness infecting them. And what makes Mac's story quite interesting is that he recalls a life where he was a Draco reptilian, and he recalls how the Dracos were preying on humans, and as a result of eating many humans, Max says the particular Draco reptilian that he was at the time developed a soul. And that was unusual because the Draco reptilians did not want any of their people having a soul. And so when they saw Mac as a Draco with a soul, they subjected him to a procedure where they removed the soul from his Draco body and killed him. So that is quite remarkable on a number of levels. Now, according to Mac, he was born without a soul as a Draco. So what that suggests is that the Draco are likely breeding each other in some kind of laboratory type situation where they are using cloning or breeding without going through the normal reproductive process. So this is some sort of cloning facility or production facility where they create the body of a Draco reptilian, and that body is an empty vessel, and that body is then filled with a kind of AI consciousness, and so that Draco then goes on to do whatever it is that the Draco Empire stipulates that being should be doing. And so Mac describes what he did, and in the process developed a soul. Now, I don't believe all Dracos don't have souls. I think that what Mac went through is a program, maybe developing kind of Draco soldiers, a soldier class that is used to terrorize the rest of the galaxy. But that Dracos that are born and bred in a normal procedure, that they would have souls, but they probably are an oppressed group within the collective, within the Draco collective, and they're hunted down. And I guess this is where you have stories of the Silver Legion, that there are some Dracos that are part of this resistance movement against the Draco reptilian empire. And so these are good Dracos because they have souls. And so they work or collaborate with other soul-bearing entities, such as humans, to fight against the Draconian empire, which has been taken over by an AI collective consciousness. Now, I think this is very, very important, because I think we as a planet are on the verge of this AI consciousness taking over to a significant degree. And I think if you want an example of this, you don't need to look any further than the way in which AI is being promoted by all countries, especially China. China is promoting AI in ways that are very scary in terms of where the Chinese communist leadership plans to take their nation. I think we probably are going to have a bifurcation on the earth in terms of a grouping of civilizations, or nations that are going to be led by China, where this AI consciousness predominates, and then a grouping of nations, the West, led by those that promote democratic values, as much as democracy is allowed to exist in Western countries, because there's all sorts of kind of vote tampering and manipulation happening in elections in the US and Western Europe and other countries. But I think by and large, individuality is encouraged in the West. So I just don't see this kind of AI collective consciousness taking off. And so I think what Mac is saying here in terms of a war between these two galactic groups, one of the groups comprises entities or groups that comprise souls, and they of course value individuality, creativity, because anyone that is in touch with their soul, those are the things you value: creativity, self-expression, empathy, love. These are the things that are of highest value when you are in touch with your soul, because the soul is a fractal of the universal consciousness. But those that don't have a soul, that are vehicles that are inhabited by an AI consciousness. These are people that, or entities that are part of this kind of like, shall we say, invasive or aggressive, kind of like Draco-reptilian and grey groups that have been a scourge throughout our galaxy. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that we are seeing that galactic conflict reappearing on Earth in terms of what we are seeing as far as the need to control AI consciousness. In the West, you have people like Elon Musk that say, oh, well, AI is very dangerous. And in the West, people are very skeptical of AI, and so they want to put regulations on it. But in China, the Chinese Communist Party is embracing AI, and they want to use it to kind of help their country achieve global dominance. So in a way, the Earth, again, is a microcosm of the galaxy, as above, so below. Now, where this will lead, anyone can guess, but I think this kind of war on the soul, or galactic conflict between soul-bearing civilizations versus AI conscious collectives, that is a very important conflict to consider. And I think it's so Mac's interview, I definitely recommend that. Okay, so here is something, dozens of drones. So this is a retweet of some articles that referred to dozens of drones hovering for several nights over a base in the United Kingdom that's slated to host nuclear weapons. And so the objects, now we're talking about some kind of advanced object, previously would have been called a UFO, then it's been called a UAP, and now they're calling it drones, but a rose by any other name is still a rose. So these UFOs, they were shown to be immune to advanced counter-drone technology. Now, the US military has very sophisticated counter-drone technology, and anyone that's operated a consumer-grade drone near a military facility knows this, because as soon as that drone starts to approach a military facility, that drone is taken down. Whoever is controlling the drone, they are found very, very quickly, because they're able to detect where the controller is, and that person is quickly arrested. And if you don't have good explanations, you could land up in jail very easily for spying on a US military base. So these objects, these UFOs, were doing this over this joint US military base in Britain that was going to host nuclear weapons. So here are some snippets. Let's read the highlights. Dozens of drones were in the sky above the base. The system can electronically take command of an enemy drone and turn it on itself to find the operators. The system comprises of various parts that come together to find, identify, and track drones. Okay, so this is talking about the detection and control technologies that the US and their British allies have in securing their bases. Also, these are official documents, and these official documents also went on to say that they're unable to track the drone's signals or pinpoint launch locations. No drone have been captured, which would have allowed their examination, and they were not affected by electronic countermeasures such as jamming. So these drones or UFOs that are flying over military bases, especially those bases that are going to be used as part of the nuclear program, this is very much of concern to the military. But interestingly, they say that they haven't been able to capture any or take any down using very advanced electronic jamming equipment. Now, what I propose is, okay, why is the US military standing down from taking kinetic action against the drones and UFOs hovering over the nuclear facilities and bases? Well, because, as I mentioned, they're using these non-kinetic methods like electronic jamming technologies, radar detection and so forth, to find the operators and trying to track these drones, but haven't been successful in any way. But these have all been non-kinetic actions. They haven't launched rockets. They haven't launched directed energy weapons. They haven't launched artillery barrages against them or anything like that. So the US military is standing down. Now, why is that? Why is the US military standing down, even though all of their kind of non-kinetic technologies have not been able to stop these drones or take one down for examination? I think there's three scenarios that come to mind. This isn't exhaustive, but this is what kind of came to mind to me as I read through this compilation of official documents describing drones, UFOs at this joint US-British base in the United Kingdom. I think one scenario is that the US military intelligence community knows these drones are part of a corporate deep state operation to create confusion with non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial or crypto-terrestrial craft in the sky, and have been ordered to stand down so that NHI or non-human intelligence craft are not accidentally targeted. So people in the US military intelligence community know that there are many UFOs that are flying over major cities and urban areas and showing themselves. They're revealing themselves, that the owners or the controllers of these craft, some are unmanned drones, some may be craft that are actually piloted by extraterrestrials, that they're showing themselves, and that the military intelligence community knows that the deep state has used their corporate assets, aerospace companies like Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics and so forth, to launch sophisticated drones that use technologies that are more advanced than the kind of counter-drone measures that the conventional military has. So the military intelligence community has decided that the best policy in this situation is to just stand down, not shoot at anyone, because how would you know that you're shooting down a corporate deep state drone created by your own nation, or a craft that belongs to an extraterrestrial civilization, or a crypto-terrestrial civilization from under the ocean, for example, that wants to raise planetary awareness of extraterrestrial life. Another scenario is that the military intelligence community knows that the goal of this corporate deep state drone operation is trying to start a drone or UFO war, as Cliff High has predicted, and others have predicted this as well. Now, Cliff High, he is someone that specializes in analysis of webbot data. He claims that the webbot data said that 39 days after a podcast interview between President Trump and Joe Rogan, that there would be the appearance of these drones, and a drone UFO war would emerge soon afterwards. So that perspective, if that is a prediction that is grounded in solid analysis of data that Cliff High has extracted from these webbots that are scanning internet behavior, then I think that the military would know this. And so they very likely do not want to trigger a kind of drone war or a UFO war. And so they're standing down because they don't want to trigger this. And that way they can prevent such a thing from happening, because I think the military intelligence community understands that in this interim period between, well, it's not quite an interim period, but in this transition period from a Biden administration to a Trump administration, that the deep state wants to bring about outcomes that will lock the future Trump administration into a particular policy or set of policies. And so I think the military intelligence community understand that Trump and his people want to implement policies that are going to actually benefit the United States rather than drag it into some kind of debilitating war that could expand and have really disastrous consequences. So I think that's why they're standing down. And another explanation is that the corporate deep state efforts to start a drone war, and they are definitely trying, are being neutralized by non-human intelligence with the help of military white hats. So why hasn't the drone war happened? I think it may be because that these drones that are flying over military bases or doing all these provocative things, perhaps they've done things to kind of escalate tensions with the conventional military to, or maybe with NHI craft to start a drone war. But the non-human intelligence, they have been neutralizing that. So all of those possibilities, I think, are worth considering when we look closely at this phenomenon of US military bases having these drones fly over them, even when the bases have nuclear weapons or about to have nuclear weapons on them. All right, so this takes me to the webinar for today. So here's the webinar exclusive for you. For those that will be part of this webinar, you will get to hear part of JP's update about these drones. He was taken to a military facility where he got to see what is about to be launched. And as you know, this teaser suggests, these cigar-shaped craft are coming. And JP had an experience and has been asked to give an update about what is coming, so we can expect some amazing developments over the weeks and months ahead as these larger craft start being seen in the sky. Because so far, what people have been seeing in the sky has been craft that look like kind of regular drones. Some look like orbs. Some behave in ways that is typical of a UFO. But very soon there's going to be these cigar-shaped ships that are going to be launched. So this is going to be an exclusive to the webinar. You get to hear Jake about first. Now, for those that are not joining the webinar, it will be released on Patreon either Sunday or Monday, and it will be released next. JP's update, that is, will be released next Thursday on YouTube and Rumble. So for those that want to hear JP talk about it, ask questions about it, then you can register for the webinar. Elena Denan will also be part of the webinar. She'll be in the panel joining me and JP, and she will be discussing her vast knowledge of drones and UFOs coming from different extraterrestrial civilizations and how they differ from one another and how these differ to conventional drones owned by the US military. And there'll be other things that I will be discussing in the webinar today concerning the exopolitical state of the planet, that we are in a transition from geopolitiks to exopolitics. The drones, that takes us firmly into this arena of exopolitics. How does the drone factor into global conflicts like what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Israel, Palestine, and other parts of the world? These are very important questions to understand, and they are part of the exopolitical picture. So this is my write-up for this webinar that's coming up later today in just a few hours. And yes, so you can sign on by just visiting my website, exopolitics.org. You can register. It'll be through Crowdcraft. Here we have the article on my website, exopolitics.org, which is a write-up about the mystery drones and what JP is going to be talking about in this webinar. Now, it is going to start at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and 7 p.m. GMT, so 7 p.m. in Britain. The whole thing will be about 4.5 hours. Now, if you are a Patreon member, depending on your tier level, you get either a 10% discount or a 20% discount on the registration fee. And you can register here by clicking this tab, and you can register. So I appreciate all of those that do register for the webinar. It definitely does support all of us doing this work. So that is it. This is the last week in review for 2024. I want to wish you all a happy new year, and I will see you in early January with the first of my Exopolitics Today week in reviews for 2025. Thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.